Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Coming up, Dundee United are down. Airdrie, Annan and Spartans are up. But will it be Partick Thistle or Ross County to win the final playoff of the season? Aberdeen and Hearts clinch Europe. Could Hibs join them? And it's the Scottish Cup final weekend. Celtic are after the treble. Inverness are gunning for Europe. But the BBC don't give a flying. Welcome one and all, I am your host Andrew Slaven, your guide once more through the magnificent mud-stained world of Scottish football. Joining me in our virtual studio today, as always, we have West Ham super producer Laura Brannan and football filmmaker Findlay Marks. How are you both, children?
Hello, all good, all good.
Don't know why I called you children, but there you go. Can I speak to you, Laura, first, please? Because
oh God, what have I done?
I'm excited for you. I know we're a Scottish football podcast, but you're Scottish and you've got a European final to look forward to.
Yeah, it's quite exciting, isn't it? So, with work, I'm going to the Europa Conference League final with West Ham.
In Prague?
In Prague. So, it's
Amazing
quite exciting.
City.
It's something a wee bit different for the CV, and it's quite good to experience it. There's a hell of a build-up just now. It feels like everyone's kind of rounding up the end of their season, and our workload has just absolutely multiplied. And it's really exciting, but it's a lot of work with UEFA and everything to kind of get all the plans in place. And as a producer, this is sort of when all my work happens, and the more work I do now, the easier the job is on the night. So yeah, it's all hands to the deck right now.
What's it actually like working with UEFA? Because they would appear on the outside to me as jobsworths. The kind of like security guard with too much power kind of vibe. Is that fair, or can you say anything? Are your hands tied?
I definitely disagree with that, to be honest.
Okay.
From my side of it.
No, I'd say you're incredibly accurate there, Finn.
That's funny, Laura, because like from me coming from BT Sport, like the actual broadcaster, whereas your club media, that's really interesting.
Oh yeah, the broadcaster rules the land.
Yeah, we get everything we want. It's wonderful.
Oh yeah, club media is the bottom of the pile. You've got to scrimp and beg, and you don't get very much. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to do try to plan out the camera positions for the match, depending on what time of the game it is, and obviously what happens if we go to extra time, penalties and everything, what happens if West Ham win the trophy, what happens if West Ham don't, and where all our photographers and videographers and social media guys are going to be. And yeah, you've got a dream scenario and then you've got a realistic scenario, and right now they're just kind of saying no to an awful lot, so we're trying to find a happy ground, a happy medium.
I'm conscious that we don't want to spend too much time on it, but it is a bit mad that West Ham have only got 4,000 tickets, because it's only
mental.
like a 20,000 seater stadium for a European final. I know it's for smaller clubs and stuff like that, but that's not the way it's going to work out.
No, because you look at like Rangers last year in the Europa League final.
Exactly.
It was silly numbers, and it's not fair on either sets of fans when you then see how it's divided up and how many tickets UEFA get and how many tickets neutrals get. It's kind of sad, but my camera position anyway will be in front of them, so they're going to be the only sets of fans I hear, regardless of whether it's 4,000 or 40,000.
I think the most important final is obviously the Champions League final, for one reason only: Dumfries is in it. Dumfries is in a European Cup final.
And you're working on it as well.
Well, yeah. Sadly, I won't be in Istanbul. Or maybe that's a good thing, presidential elections. I think they were done, actually. I think that's fine. Everything seems to be okay in Turkey. Not at Christmas.
Is it still quite a lot of work for you as well in the build-up to the Champions League final? Because obviously you're working it for BT, Andrew.
Well, a lot of what I'm doing right now is pretty much, we've had all of our creative meetings, so all the edits, all the plans for the edits, what shoots are happening, what interviews are taking place, and there'll be lots of requests for interviews. There'll be requests for certain things to happen, which I can't talk about, which is what you'll all see in the build-up. It's a really good, fun, creative process, to be fair. But then you go to UEFA and you say, we want to do this. Or you go to Man City and you say you want to do this. And they're like, yeah, you're not going to do that. You're not gonna get that, and you try and change things up a little bit, but it's good fun.
What I'm learning is football is just a whole world of everyone saying no to each other.
Yeah, totally. But if you don't ask, you don't get.
Exactly.
That's the way it works. Finn, I suppose you feel a little bit left out, really. Have you got anything coming up? Anything at all? You busy? You quiet?
Yeah. So I'm feeling slightly left out with the two of you talking about your massive European finals that you're gearing up for. I've found my own final to go to with work. Now, I've been doing quite a lot of work with Melbourne City, and they've reached what's known as the grand final of the A-League men's. Ooh. So they, against a backdrop of quite a lot of contention, it's been moved to Sydney. Generally, it's at the home ground of whomever the highest ranked team is going into the final. Mm-hmm. But to the ire of a lot of fans, they've signed a 3-year deal, the A-Leagues, with Visit New South Wales, or whatever that tourist arm of the state that Sydney's in is called. And a lot of fans, I think, aren't going out of protest. But it'll be interesting to work that. It's the first time I've actually worked a cup final or a final of some description. So off to Sydney on Friday for a couple of days. Yeah, it'll be good fun.
Isn't it nice to see that it's not just our own organisation has controversies of its own? Yeah, that's quite good fun. Look, we're going to skip the funny section because there's so much news to talk about. I suppose the most recent thing that's came out, guys, is that we have a new Scotland squad that's been announced. Steve Clark's came out and announced his team for the double header in June. Any surprises for you, Laura?
Actually not. It's quite a settled looking nice Scotland squad.
A nice Scotland squad. That's the headline in the papers.
Yeah, like I'm really looking forward to actually having 2 Scotland games to look forward to. Like there's Dom Hyman. How do you say his name? Is it Hyam?
Hyam.
Hyam.
Dom Hyam.
Hyam.
Dom Hyam. Hyam. Yeah.
Hyam. Shut up. That's not how you say it.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Hyam.
Yeah, I'd say Hyam.
As in ham.
Yeah, like West Hyam.
Oh, you're absolutely You're stitching me up here. Whew. Yeah, like no, you look at Dom.
Dom Hyam.
I'm totally keeping all of this in, by the way. I've got no idea how to pronounce it.
100%.
It might be Hyam because he's got that chant, doesn't he? Hyam, the one and only.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a great terrorist chant. So, Don Hyam.
Okay.
One more time with feeling, Laura.
I don't even have anything good to say about it.
He's a good player.
Oh man.
He's a good player.
Yeah. Dom Hyam is.
It's been a long week, everybody. It's been a
very
2
long
weeks.
I've not had much sleep.
Do you want a piece of Hyam?
Okay. Right. So yeah, no real surprises apart from maybe Don Hyam from Black. I can't do that. I literally can't do it. Somebody else mentioned him.
At least he's Scottish born, Laura. So he might play for an English club and we've never heard of him before, but he's as Scottish as they come, so that's okay.
He did actually come into the squad late in the last round
he did.
of qualifiers. I actually missed this at the time, and when I saw the squad announced, I checked out to see who he was and then realised, oh wait, it must have been a very late inclusion last time round, and I completely missed it. But yeah, look, fair play to him. Let's see what he's made of. I don't know if he's actually going to play or not, but
he's a good backup.
Yeah, I think the only other kind of surprise is Shea Adams missing out. Not sure if he's picked up an injury or not, but it opens the door to Kevin Nisbet and Lawrence Shankland both being in the squads. Obviously with Christian Dykes, who I think play better off the striker, but like you've got actual striking options just now, and that's actually in an attacking sense that squad is looking really healthy.
Especially on the bench as well. The likes of Lewis Ferguson, who's like an absolute cult hero at Bologna now, scored his 6th goal in the Serie A at the weekend against the champions Napoli. The only Scottish player to have scored more goals in a Serie A season would be Dennis Law.
Wow.
So he's smashing it out there. And if you think that at Aberdeen he would have left for a couple of million quid, he's easily in the 15 to 20 million pound bracket now. Easily. So to have that probably on the bench for Scotland it shows how much strength we have now.
It's really brilliant, the strength and depth. And I think, how long have we spent years looking at these squads being announced, and, everybody, you can never keep everybody happy all of the time. But there's been so many occasions where they're just like, I can't believe this person's getting in, I can't believe that person's getting in. By and large now, you're looking at the squad, as you say, Laura, and you're just like, it's a really good squad. Like, there's strength and depth all over. You trust the players that are coming in, whether they're starters or players coming in at the fringes. A wee word for Kenny McLean as well. I just feel like, when they say, like, in a post-apocalyptic world, cockroaches are the only thing that would survive a nuclear explosion. I think Kenny McLean getting in a Scotland squad would be the other thing that happens. Irrespective of former thing, he's just like, he's always there, he's always on the bench, always dependable, he's always there. I love Kenny McLean, so fair play to him.
Yeah, like he scores penalties. He can be there as long as he likes.
I suppose one player we could see coming back into the fold maybe next season would be Alan Campbell, who I know he didn't play in the promotion final for the Premier League for Luton, but we had him in the podcast a few weeks ago. I'm so delighted for him, Laura. Obviously, you worked closely with him at your time at Motherwell.
Yeah, it was class. Was a bit gutted not to see him play at Wembley for Luton in the final, but the fact they've went up, they're up in the Premier League next season. This is huge for him. And you're kind of talking about Lewis Ferguson there. He's just another young Scottish player who is pushing on. He's went down to the Championship. He's worked his way up now. It's another young, good Scottish player getting experience under his belt, and that's only going to be good for Scotland. And I think the only reason he's not really kind of around the squad right now is just because we're so healthy in that kind of area, in that department, that he's unlucky. But as the squad progresses and how he progresses, he's always going to be one that's in contention.
What else happened over the weekend?
Celtic got the trophy, and Celtic fans had a party.
A party in Glasgow? That always ends well.
Yeah, and the kind of folk who live around Trongate weren't too amused about it. But did anyone see the drone shots though? The drone shot that flew through Trongate.
No.
Well, this is class. I mean, it's the whole Trongate area, right? If you know Glasgow, it's like kind of around Salt Market, High Street, the kind of cross there. Not far from like Barrowlands, and obviously the walk from Celtic Park back into city centre again. And this drone just flies right down, around and back up again. And the sheer vastness of Celtic fans just congregating, and it just looks great to see that many out there, smoke bombs, flags, just happy fans celebrating the end of the season and their success. It was really good to see. I liked it.
The footage was actually amazing. We've all seen like the celebrations in Naples with Napoli winning the Scudetto for the first time in 30-40 years. And I think it's a good advert as well to see these things. Obviously, from a personal point of view, I'm not a massive fan of seeing Celtic fans celebrating a league title, but you have to say objectively, it was really impressive, and it's going down Trongate and there's people sitting on the traffic lights and there's smoke bombs going off and all that kind of stuff. It looks really cool, and of course it's a bit of a shame that we get the usual kind of Karens jumping in 2-footed at the end, being like, absolute disgrace, scared to go out, doing other stuff. It's like, it's a party, it's fine, it'll be cleaned up tomorrow. It's what we pay our taxes for, to have people clean up the city centre. I get so bored with it every single year. You get these people pontificating. It always tends to be people that have no understanding of not just football but sport. They don't see the importance and can't understand the cultural relevancy of it. So they just think it's all pointless and it shouldn't be happening.
Aye.
And that's the thing that really, really annoys me. Just one other point on this while I'm kind of on my soapbox. If residents genuinely are annoyed by these scenes every year, they should petition their MPs and police to create designated areas where these fans can celebrate, because they will celebrate. It's a joyful thing. It's a party. They want to get together and celebrate with each other. They should action MPs and police to create these designated areas like they do in almost every major European town and city when fans have something to celebrate like this. So that to me would be the answer. So until that happens, just like kind of shut up and let people enjoy themselves.
Yeah, I know. I'm totally in agreement there. I think it's disappointing to see the press lead on headlines like 10 arrests at Celtic title party, when I'd love to know how many arrests happen on Sauchiehall Street on a Saturday night.
Exactly.
Because I'm pretty sure it's more than 10 on a weekly basis. Like, see if people are getting uppity about these fans. It's so much worse when you go look like around the world. I went to Paris for the World Cup final in 2018, and the entire Champs-Elysees, like the whole stretch of that road was rammed full of fans. And it was great at the start, but it turned nasty. And you had fans rioting. They were breaking into shops to steal mopeds. The police were out with tear gas. There were stampedes.
What did you get? What did you come back with, Laura?
She just went in for a really lovely brie and Hyam sandwich from a local boulangerie.
But yeah, like it can be a lot more tasty, shall I say, and heated on the continent. I think a few thousand fans sitting on a lamppost in a traffic light and not really doing much isn't really anything to kind of get your knickers in a twist over.
Exactly, and it was all cleared up by the next day anyway. It's just, oh man, it's just pathetic.
Celtic fans were celebrating a different trophy as well at the weekend, Finn, weren't they? The women's team won the Scottish Cup final.
Yeah, it was the first time the match has been played at Hampden, and I think Celtic will be happy to have won something during the season because they were on the verge of winning the league title literally until the dying minutes just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was outside their door, wasn't it?
It was. And
outside Celtic Park.
Not quite Helicopter Sunday, but Uber Sunday.
It was Taxi Sunday.
But Glasgow City scored a last-minute goal to clinch the title ahead of them. But that's the all the trophies kind of split between the big three clubs this year. So yeah, they'll be delighted to have secured that trophy.
Neil Doncaster has been out and about. I mean, this is the time that he kind of appears behind the magic wall of the SFA. But he was in the Price of Football podcast where he kind of answered a lot of questions in a very Neil Doncaster way. Some defensive or whatnot, but have you guys listened to this and seen some of the comments that he's made, particularly around selling the rights of the game and even talking about alcohol in football?
It was a really interesting thing to listen to, and even if it's a podcast that you don't listen to, Price of Football is one of my favourite ones to listen to. It's very informed, a lot of sensible chat, and the guys that host it are really good. I'd encourage you to listen to this one just because more than anything, it's pretty much the only time we actually get to hear Neil Doncaster's thoughts on a lot of things, because he doesn't tend to do public appearances. He doesn't tend to engage with fans in overtly public forums that often. And even then, you know, in this, whilst the two guys that run the Price of Football podcast, you know, did ask them some difficult listener questions, I didn't feel that they ever really pushed him too hard on any of his answers. Yeah. And I think the thing that came across most, I would encourage people to listen to the whole podcast so you get it in context. But having listened through a lot of the questions, most of Neil Doncaster's replies, while he is clearly very intelligent and speaks really well, seem to be, if something was happening in the Scottish game and it's maybe not a positive thing, his answer more often than not tended to be, well, it happens in other countries. Or I think the thing that you and I both picked up on, Laura, listening to it, was around the rights and marketing and selling our game. His answer most of the time, again, tended to be, well, it's not my fault that nobody's interested in sponsoring us. We're just kind of like, is that not kind of your job? Like, if you're taking the credit for the good things that happen in the game, you know, the TV deal that they keep harping on about and all those kind of things, should you not also take then the criticism for when, you know, the Scottish Cup hasn't had a sponsor for 3 years?
Yeah, he did say that everyone knew the rights were available and other broadcasters weren't queuing up for the rights. And it's like, hold on a minute. Just because nobody comes to you doesn't mean you just sit back and go, oh, okay then. I mean, like, Finn, you're a freelancer, right? If you just sat there and went, well, nobody's coming to me with any work, so oh well, you wouldn't be able to feed your family. You need to go out and look for it. It's literally, it's on your shoulders. It's your responsibility. You can't just sit back and wait for somebody to come and want you. It's
a very bizarre stance to have, isn't it? It just doesn't make sense. And if it generally doesn't make sense, he knows he's in a corner. But it was an interview where it felt very much like, and probably fairly so, that he'd had an advanced viewing of the questions and stuff like that. So his answers were ready made. He knew what he needed to say. Yeah. And he's a good politician. Do you know what I mean? But I just want him to be a bit more human and less robotic. That would be nice, please.
football, bloody hell.
Well, it's a bumper weekend to close the season because the Scottish Cup final is this Saturday and the Premiership playoff will be the following day on Sunday. Celtic chasing their first treble under Ange Postecoglou, but could Inverness, they have history. Super Cali go ballistic. Celtic are atrocious. That famous, was it 2001, Finn? I'm sure you remember it.
8th of February 2000.
8th of February, wow. You'd be good in a quiz.
The first game of football I ever went to. It's etched into my brain.
Amazing. We've had a few championship teams being in the cup final as well. I remember going to the Queen of the South Cup final against Rangers in 2008. Mm-hmm. And oddly, Billy Dodds was a coach for Queens at that time as well. But this will be his first time Billy Dodds will be walking them out in Hampden as a manager. So it's a pretty special occasion despite being massive underdogs. Laura, you're the most optimistic person out of the three of us. Could there be an upset on Saturday?
Well, yeah, there could.
Wrong.
There won't be.
Inverness have put Celtic out of the cup 3 times. Well, in my lifetime watching football anyway. I don't count that as a long time, but it's about 20 years. But they are Celtic's bogey team. Stranger things have happened, but it's unlikely. What I'm interested to see is how Inverness respond to having a month off, because the prep for these two teams have been very different. Obviously, Celtic have played on a regular basis, albeit their last 2 games were essentially dead rubbers, so they got to rest quite a few players. Inverness, on the other hand, though, they've not played since the 5th of May because they missed out on the championship the playoffs, the Premiership playoff, to go up. They have played a friendly. They played Dungannon Swifts 1-3-1, but that was the only game they've played. They've had 3 weeks now to kind of get fit again, get ready, but how much of that do you really kind of keep your match sharpness? And that's kind of where the concern would be for me. It's kind of actually where my concern is when you think about Scotland's games coming up in a few weeks' time, when it's sort of just floating in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of a no man's land. It's too early for pre-season. It's too late for the current season. How do players really approach it? So yeah, I'd like to I'm intrigued to see how Caledonian Thistle handle this.
You always hear managers or pundits talk about, cup finals or really big games. There's never the need for a big team talk or whatever. Like, players should just be up for it and ready because of the occasion itself. But you're right, like in terms of the physicality, the preparation of that, and how are their bodies going to be ready for it? I don't know. I think it's such a tough ask when you look at the likes of Celtic, who are always super athletic anyway. But Finn, any upset for you? You're definitely in the no camp. It's going to be a treble for Ange Postecoglou.
I'm pretty much as close to being 100% convinced as possible. Yeah, I think it will be a fairly comfortable day for Celtic. It's still an amazing achievement, and I think there's something like, is it about 6,000 Caledonian Thistle fans will be at Hampden for it, which is a pretty decent travelling support, essentially, for what's a bit of a trek in an away game. So I'm sure it'll be an amazing occasion, and yeah, as you're saying, great for Billy Dodds to lead his team out at Hampden as well. It's such a privilege, because it's the second oldest cup competition in the world. It's our oldest cup competition. It's such a competition steeped in tradition, and it's the big showpiece at the end of the season. I think it'll be a really great occasion. As for the spectacle on the pitch, I think it's as close to a foregone conclusion as possible. More than happy to be proved wrong next week, but I think it'll be pretty comfortable for Celtic.
You said there's lots of tradition around this cup final, but tradition's kind of been thrown out the window a little bit by the broadcasters, because we are faced with a 5:30 kickoff, which has had like a massive public outcry. I think the clubs have came out and said they're against it. I think the SFA have kind of admitted they didn't really want it either. Laura, do you want to kind of round up what's been going on in the build-up to this in terms of a kind of organisational point of view?
This is a bit of a mess, isn't it? It's we're kind of in the position now where we're potentially being stuck with the FA Cup final, because it looks like England's final is kind of being prioritised more than ours. It's a kind of sad state of affairs we're in just now. So yeah, we the kick-off time get changed to 5:30. as you're saying, the clubs don't want it, the SFA have said they don't want it, but they're saying their hands are tied because of broadcasters. So Ian Maxwell's came out and said they told the government that in order to guarantee a UK-wide audience, and by that I mean on BBC One across the UK, not BBC One Scotland, BBC One, the main one, then the BBC told them they had to move the kick-off time. But when you look back in the last 20 years, at least the last 20 years, the Scottish Cup final has never been shown on BBC One. So it's never been shown to a UK-wide audience. So okay, right, what's different with this year? So we move the kick-off time. Does that solve the problem? Well, no, because BBC One confirmed their schedule, and at 5:30 they're going to be showing Garden Rescue instead of the Scottish Cup final. And on top of that, while the game has obviously been shown on BBC One in Scotland, just a Scottish audience, we've now been told that if the FA Cup final goes to extra time and penalties, then that game will remain on BBC One Scotland. And instead, our cup final will be shifted to BBC Scotland, which you're then going into a kind of unknown realm here of, you know, when people say things like the Scottish Cup final, the FA Cup final, the World Cup, they're crown jewels, and by that they mean that these games are available to air on free television, on free channels for everyone to watch. You're kind of venturing into unknown territory there, because technically BBC Scotland isn't one of those listed channels. So yeah, as it stands, our country is kind of at risk here of our flagship cup final not being shown on our channels.
The other variable in this is that for a long time, certainly from when I can remember, the English FA Cup final was normally the 5:30 kickoff, the later one. But I think this is like the second or third year where the rights have been shared between ITV and BBC. So ITV would have had a hand in potentially moving the English FA Cup final, and I have no doubt that Viaplay, the Swedish broadcasters, may have had something to say about it as well. So the idea for me that it's just on BBC, I don't think it's, I don't know. I don't think it's just as clean cut that this is the BBC's decision.
What I find weird is that no one in the media is really challenging this in any way. When you've got the club saying they don't want it, the SFA saying they don't want it, there's just completely mixed messages coming out about the BBC as well, because I don't think the intention was ever to show it UK wide. They've never done it before, so what would be different with this year?
I remember growing up and having, I say growing up, and then I was going to say in the pub, and having both games on.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember being able to watch both games, and
Yeah.
and that is almost like the kind of the enjoyment of you can flick between two games. I've always loved that concept. It's just bizarre.
I think the final insult is if the FA Cup final was to overrun, that we still wouldn't get our cup final. Yeah. And also I remember growing up as well that the Scottish Cup final would have about 2 hours build up as well.
Yeah.
It would always start about 1 o'clock and never get in 30 minutes. It just feels like nobody puts our game down more than the people that run it.
Yeah.
In our own country. And it's depressing because these are the people that should be backing it up and fighting our corner. And if they're not, who is?
The thing is, normally if you look at the viewership and the ratings, the 5:30 kickoff is statistically the better kickoff time. That's why Sky use it for their Premier League coverage. BT absolutely loved it when they had the late kickoff time. It's just when most people watch football, bizarrely, because it's dinner time. That's when you sit down with your family and have a lovely meal in the evening. But not in Scotland or in England, for that matter. So it's bizarre for me because I can kind of see the positive side to being a 5:30 kickoff. It's just the confusion of where you can watch it, and if the impact of the FA Cup final, like you said, if it goes to extra time penalties, it just seems a bit of a mess. Add on to that the fact that I think it was ScotRail, they had to come out and put a special train service on for Inverness fans as well, so that they could get home in time. But or get there in time, was it?
Both.
Yeah.
But even then, I remember seeing that if the Scottish Cup goes to extra time as well, I don't think that train is running at the time.
Yeah.
So
If Inverness win the cup on penalties, they are not going to make it back into Glasgow city centre in time to get that train.
it's all right. They'll go to the Trongate and have a right big party.
What a bleak campaign it's been for Dundee United. Their fate is sealed. They've lost every post-split game. Down with a whimper. They're going to play a 5th season in 8 in the Championship. Jim Goodwin will be there to see through that rebuild. It finished here at Fir Park. Motherwell 3, Dundee United 2.
Well, the final 2 rounds of the Scottish Premiership season have come and gone, and the dust has settled. The top flight will not come back for a few more months, but we do know Dundee United fans were very, very sorry. You have been relegated, as you probably already know. But Ross County have managed to get into the relegation playoff final. We should give trophies out like they do in the National League.
Do you know what? This is something I was actually going to bring up. I find it really odd that you get a trophy for winning a playoff. When I watched Luton lift the cup,
Agree.
I was like, wait a minute, surely your prize is the promotion.
Yes.
Why are you lifting a trophy? It's not a cup fight. It was very strange.
I love it, to be honest. However, there is is a weird oddity in Scotland how there's a relegation playoff rather than a promotion playoff. It's odd because the team trying to get promoted, it's not. It's just all bizarre and strange. But yeah, Ross County against Partick Thistle. It's going to be an absolute breezer, and I'm going to put because I'm a mug, and betting is a mug's game. But I'm going to say Partick Thistle are going to do it. Disagree with me?
No, I'm not going to.
Right, okay.
They're just destroying everyone in their path right now. What Chris Doolan has done, I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but it's been incredible.
It's incredible.
The stats on how many goals they've scored, and have you got the actual numbers there, Finn?
Yeah. So since he's come in as the Thistle manager, he's been in charge for 17 games. They've lost once. They've scored 39 goals. They've kept 11 clean sheets. I think once you put this as well in the context of he just lost, was it his dad that passed away?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And he still took the game that day.
Yeah.
He's still on the touchline.
He's just lost his dad, and he's still, you can see that the team is fighting for him. They're fighting for each other. Because it's not like it was close against Ayr United. I mean, they absolutely smashed them. 8-0 on aggregate, 3-0 in the first game at Firhill, 5-0 away in Ayr. It's just like, and we've talked about so often in the last couple of weeks around the playoffs and everything, how important momentum is going into these games. Mm-hmm. And I think you would have to say all the momentum is with Partick Thistle. I'd just like to point out as well, by the way, I think both you and I have called out Partick as our favourites to go up. Andrew, from weeks and weeks ago, one of the first times, after Chris Doolan had won his first couple of games in charge and we had Ian Booth Robertson on, I think we both kind of got the feeling that Thistle looked like the likely team, and I think they were in 6th at that point. So it's good to see them coming up. As much as it would be a shame to lose Ross County out the top flight, it would be great to have Partick Thistle back. I also think sometimes you look at clubs that have gone down to the Championship and they've struggled to get back out of it. I think the way that Ross County are set up, the way that they're run as a club and all of that kind of thing, I don't think a huge amount will change with their infrastructure going down potentially next season, which stands them in good place to potentially come back up again fairly quickly.
I don't think Malcolm Mackay stays in a job if Ross County go down, but I also think it's with Jim Goodwin being given the Dundee United job permanently now. I kind of think that's a good decision. He's a manager who knows the Scottish Championship very well. He was there with Alloa and did an amazing job with no resources at all. So Mark Ogren, the owner of Dundee United, has given him full backing. Jim Goodwin said that he's going to rip up any contract for any player that he thinks doesn't feel like up for the fight. I think they're a team that could come straight back up. Jim Goodwin being able to rip that team apart. But he does want the likes of Fletcher to stay around. What do you think, guys? Do you think Dundee United, okay, they will be favourites, but do you think they should go up and they've got the right people there to get back up?
Firstly, I think the timing of the announcement was strange. When you put out saying that Jim Goodwin is being made parent manager before the final game, when it was all but confirmed, but still not mathematically confirmed, ahead of relegation, it was never going to get a warm reception from fans, and it was a wee bit of a rocky kind of. It wasn't the warmest reception, but I think had the announcement come maybe in a couple of days' time, when the dust has settled and everyone sort of accepted it, then I think it would have been a lot more accepted, because it is the right decision. He is very good at that level. I mean, if he's got full control over the squad in the Championship, yeah, I think they could. If he kind of rips up that team, they very much could come straight back up. I think losing some players like Charlie Mulgrew could help them.
Yeah.
He's not had a good season, but keeping someone like Stephen Fletcher is a positive. That would obviously help. And he's going into probably what is his last season. So he could score goals for fun at that level and have a really good kind of bow out of playing. Do you know what? I just can't help but think it's so unfortunate, because this was a season that Benjamin Siegrist left to go and sit on Celtic's bench and do absolutely nothing. One of the best goalkeepers in Scotland, and he has absolutely wasted a year of his career, and Dundee United have paid the price for it. I just think, see if he stayed at United, I don't think they would be in the position they're in right now.
I totally agree with you, and I think even the galling thing was in the dead rubber games for Celtic, it was Scott Bain that got the nod. Like Siegrist couldn't even get in a second choice when Joe Hart was having a rest. I completely agree with you, because I think he would have been good for another 10 points potentially. In games that they've lost that they could have drawn, or games that they've drawn that they could have won, and just the confidence that he clearly gave that United backline over the last number of years. I completely agree with you. On paper, Dundee United should be looking to come straight back up again, but the fact is that this will be their 5th season in the last 8 years that they've spent in the Championship, and they've spent a lot of money trying to get out of it, a lot of money trying to stay up, and they haven't been successful in that. So I think something really quite different has to happen. They might get that with Jim Goodwin being announced, like you say, he's a manager that knows the division. One thing I did find quite odd, I don't know if you guys saw this in the full statement announcing him as manager. This is something that Aberdeen fans took to task. There was a brilliant little sentence which said, furthermore, throughout his stint with Aberdeen, he oversaw the construction of a squad which finished 3rd in the Scottish Premiership. I was like, that's some set of balls, isn't it, to come out with a sentence like that?
I respect that a lot.
I mean, it made me chuckle. I don't think the Aberdeen fans would see it quite that way. But yeah, given their resources, the tools at their disposal, the manager they've got, and some of the players that they hopefully will be able to hang on to, there's no reason United shouldn't get out of the Championship next season again, back to the top flight. But as we say, that's much easier said than done.
One thing that we're going to miss out on is going to be the Dundee derby in the Premiership. Just something I always really, really think should be the case, because Dundee are back into the Premiership and they have a new manager. Tony Docherty was announced Dundee's new manager on Monday, known as kind of long-term assistant manager to Derek McInnes. So been with him at Aberdeen, St Johnstone, the other way around, and then Bristol Road. Is Bristol City or Bristol Rovers?
Bristol City.
He's been with them everywhere. So this will be his first proper management job. And he kind of there was a good quote of him talking about when he was doing his pro license. Like so, Walter Smith came in and did big speeches, and one of the things he took from the Walter Smith speech was to go with your gut, and this is what he's saying. Left field appointment, I suppose, but he's someone who knows the Scottish game really well. I think he's got a good grounding, and he's obviously a good coach. It's just people sometimes always are waiting for either a fancier name or someone who's been there and done it. Just because he's been an assistant shouldn't hold you back, should it?
It shouldn't, but it is a very different role. I think you can see some fairly disastrous number twos trying to step up to the managerial role in recent years.
I've had very many disastrous number twos, Finn, in my time.
Angelo Alessio came to mind, who was Antonio Conte's number two for a long time. He was just an absolute disaster at Killie. And then even Steve Clark's right-hand man,
Alex Dyer, yeah.
was terrible during his tenure as well. Even someone like Ali McCoist, absolutely perfect as an assistant manager to Walter Smith. They enjoyed great success total pony as a football manager himself. It's a completely different role.
Walter Smith was assistant manager to Graham Souness.
Well, there you
go. And to Alex Ferguson. So
exactly. So you can get number twos stepping up to that stage that do well. I think Dundee fans will be praying it's definitely more the Walter Smith type and less Angelo Alessio and Alex Dyer.
In terms of the race for Europe, Aberdeen, they nailed third spot down, so they are going back to Europe. Hearts as well, only a 1-1 draw in the Edinburgh Derby, but it was enough to book a place in Europe again, so successive seasons in Europe. Elsewhere, there was good news for Motherwell fans. They got to enjoy the story around Kevin Van Veen, who scored his 11th consecutive game, which, now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I did see this being posted up, that this broke a post-war top-flight record and also a 103-year-old club record. This is proper anorak stuff, isn't it, guys?
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually a post-war record technically. It might be for one season. Bobby Lennox, I think, scored in 13 consecutive league games. But that was across 2 seasons between March and September in 1968. All of that aside, as much of a muchness, it's still the record up fairly recently, certainly of the SPL and SPFL era. It was held by Mark Viduka, who'd scored 10 in a row for Celtic. I think it was in the 2001 season, round about then. So Van Veen's beaten that by scoring in 11 consecutive games, which is an incredible achievement. You know, his goals really have been the catalyst that have kept Motherwell up as well, because they were struggling at some points of the season.
Yeah, Stevie Hamill must be raging. But there you go. That's the way it works. Congratulations, Kevin.
Regrets? No, it's good laugh on it. So
I didn't find it funny.
So we took a week off, and in that time, Spartans won promotion from the Pyramid Playoff, so they're heading to the SPFL. Airdrie, they're going up to the Championship because they beat Hamilton Accies after beating them on penalties. We're going to focus now on one of the other big playoff stories, Annan Athletic. They've been a fixture of the 4th tier of Scottish football ever since first being admitted to the league system way back in 2008. That's when they won the spot in the old 3rd division to replace Gretna. They were actually handed that place ahead of Cove Rangers, Spartans, Preston Athletic and Edinburgh City. 3 of those sides obviously in the SPFL along with Annan. But next season, for the first time in their history, Annan are going to be playing in the division above, having gained promotion to League One. The Galabankies demolished second place Dumbarton 6-0 on aggregate in the playoff semi-final before dispatching Clyde in the final, again with a fairly comfortable 5-2 aggregate scoreline. So last week, in the aftermath of their historic promotion, Laura and Finn caught up with Annan's captain, Steven Swinglehurst.
Stephen, thanks so much for joining us on the show. There's kind of really only one place to start. How did it feel when the final whistle went against Clyde and you were promoted to League One for the first time ever?
It was incredible. It's what the club's been aiming for ever since I've been there anyway. And to get the chance to do it over Clyde as well, because they beat us 4 years ago in the playoff final. So to obviously do it over them as well, it was amazing.
Just out of interest from a perspective of part-time players and everyone that's got jobs and stuff, how did you kind of juggle celebrations after it and a full-time job as well? Did you book a day off in advance?
I'm actually self-employed, so I've got a bit of freedom when I can take days off. And I knew we had a really good chance to get in the playoffs, so I kind of jumped the gun a little bit and booked the time off anyway. And then if it didn't happen, then obviously I'd have had a nice time with the family and stuff. But I know that we're taking the week off after the final just to go on a mad one. I'm not a party animal, but I had a few. On the Saturday, I just had a little bit of family time and some of the other lads went back out. But yeah, some lads booked a week off just to go absolutely crazy, and to be honest, I don't blame them. If I was a party animal, that's what I'd have probably done as well.
Fair play, that's good planning.
Kind of looking back a little bit over the season, it was a fairly inauspicious start to the season for Annan. You weren't fast out the traps or anything, but as the season went on, there seemed to be a bit of momentum building. When you were heading into the playoffs, were you guys confident that you could get the result against Dumbarton and then Clyde as well?
Yeah, I mean, at the start of the season, I was actually doing a job up in Annan, and he was an Annan fan, and he actually turned to me and was like, "What's going on? We've got some good players." And I was like, honestly, don't worry, it'll click at some point in the season like it always does. Once we hit the ground running, we will fly. With the players we've got, the Tommy Goss, Chrissy Johnson, Tony Wallace, Greg Fleming, Rhys Lyon, Aidan Smith, I knew once we hit the ground running, there was no team that could handle us. And it just seemed to all click into place as if it was our time when we battered Dumbarton and we found out it was Clyde. After what happened in the last game against Clyde in the playoffs, I said I will not be walking off that pitch without a victory.
Yeah, there was a personal score to settle for you against Clyde, wasn't there? From the 2019 League One playoff.
Yeah.
You'd beaten Clyde 1-0 at home in the first leg of the final. And then at Broadwood, Clyde were winning 1-0, so 1-1 in aggregate, until with just 4 minutes left on the clock, the referee awarded Clyde a somewhat dubious penalty from a foul that you'd committed in the box.
It's haunted me for the past 4 years, giving that penalty away. So obviously I owed it to the club, I owed it to myself, the players, everyone, just to win the game. And luckily it was the final, so it meant promotion. So
there was an amazing level of personal vindication for you in seeing the club get up as well through the playoffs from what happened 4 years ago. Yeah, massive. I've spoken to a lot of people about that game and it was never a penalty, but the abuse that me and my partner got after the game, of the Clyde fans especially, was unbelievable. And I vowed to that day I'll get revenge one day. Luckily, the time was Saturday. I'm not gonna lie, I felt so smug and I'm so happy we relegated them.
That's brilliant.
Footballers, like, they're human beings as well. I just love that there's fans expect footballers, to kind of be robots or not have these emotions, and they're human beings. They've got families, they have ups and downs with that kind of thing as well. And I love it from that way as well. It's like, obviously, you're professional, you do the handshakes and stuff like that, but those little personal things, those things that drive you on, are fantastic. So I just love that you absolutely were reveling in that against Clyde.
Let's put it this way, I'm getting married in under a month's time, so I've just had my stag do in Dublin, and Tommy Muir, who plays Brannan as well, was my best man.
Yeah.
And he dressed us up on like 3 different occasions, and one of them was a Clyde top. And he went, if you don't have it, you've got to drink Jaeger bombs. Well, I don't drink Jaeger bombs, but I refuse to wear a Clyde top.
Amazing.
And I was very messy that night.
I absolutely.
I'll never wear that top, and everyone knows it.
That's class. You've been at the club for so long now. What does this mean to a club of this stature? Just give us a wee bit of context of how big this is for you guys.
It's massive. I mean, we are literally just a small little town in south of Scotland. There's people working full-time jobs and then coming to the club on the night to make sure that the electric's turned on, to make sure the showers are warm for the lads. It's literally so many people that don't get paid and they do it off their own back. So it's massive. I mean, all the support round Annan going to the second leg was massive. Every business was promoting it. They were wishing us good luck. We were also happy to be able to repay them and get the result that everyone wanted.
We know all the cliches of like the players that have their full-time jobs, their day jobs, but you mentioned the other staff as well. Can you give us some examples, like who doesn't get paid and who does all that kind of hard graft?
Well, I'm probably going to start with Mr. Annan Athletic himself, Alan Irvin. He's been there ever since I've been there. He's had an illness. I think he had a stroke early this season.
Wow.
So he hasn't been going to as many games as he'd like. And then when we all celebrated in the change rooms after that, he walked in. So it was obviously nice to see him. There's Karen Robertson, obviously the manager Peter Murphy, there's Craig Bonner, the physio, there's Stevie Bryson, all the committee members, the chairman. The list is endless. They've all got other jobs, and then they all come on a Tuesday and Thursday night and Saturdays, give up the free time away from the families to keep the lads right.
You've been at the club for over a decade now. You've racked up more than 300 appearances for Annan. What is it specifically about Annan that you clearly enjoy, having spent so much of your career there?
I think it's just what it makes you feel like. You walk into the club and even people like you don't think knows your name, they know your name. They're always stop and talk. Even just like the atmosphere like around the club when the games are going on. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the best footballer in the world, but I give them 100%, and I think that's what the fans like. As long as you give 100%, they'll love you and they'll cheer you on. I have had chances to move away a few times, but not once has it crossed my mind to say I do want to leave.
I mean, it seems to be something that a club like Annan attracts. Like, they are such a beacon in the local community, as you've already said, and even looking to things like their managerial history over the last number of years, they haven't tended to change manager too often. In fact, they've only had 3 different permanent managers since 2006.
Yeah.
Harry Kearney, Jim Chapman, and of course Peter Murphy, who's been in the hot seat since 2017.
Yeah.
Is that another factor that's kind of added into this feel of the community club? And then does that translate on the park to a kind of level of consistency and familiarity for the players especially in trying to get promoted and to achieve all that you can as a club?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at there's not much change in the structure of the club, so it's good to have obviously Peter Murphy, who I've actually known for a long time. I was at Carlisle United before I joined Annan, so I've known him for must be 12, 14 years. So it was good to know that when he was coming in, I knew who he was, and then the wealth of experience that he brings is obviously second to none as well. I'm sure it is as well as wanting to fulfil the history in getting promoted for the first time in the club's career.
One big thing to look forward to next season is, of course, the derby, getting to play Queen of the South in the league.
Yes.
How much are you looking forward to this one?
I mean, as a centre half as well, who likes kicking people, there's nothing better than a derby. We played them this season in the cup, because there's always a cup in Scotland at the start of the season.
Yeah.
And we actually beat them for the first time. I think it's in Annan's history as well. But yeah, I can't wait personally.
Just looking ahead to next season more broadly as well. I mean, it's hugely exciting for the club, for the town of Annan as well. In the intro, kind of made reference to clubs like Cove Rangers, Spartans, who of course have just won promotion to League Two from the playoffs, and Edinburgh City as they were at the time, but FC Edinburgh now. What do you feel like the kind of future for a club is like Annan looking forward? They've been mainstays in League Two for a long time, but are there ambitions to kind of the club to drive on and go as high as they can in the league system? Yeah,
100%. Especially with the manager we've got now, he wants to get promoted. He wants to take the club to the highest possible place. Don't get us wrong, next season it's a hard league.
Yeah.
Especially with Hamilton coming down, there's forward curve.
Yeah.
I mean, these are big clubs with a good backing. Annan don't have the biggest of backing, but we always seem to attract that calibre of player that can just change a game, score that goal, or create that chance to win us again.
That's it for another week. Almost done for this season. Our maiden season, guys. Next week, that's going to be our final show of the series. But don't worry, we will be back in time for the new season kicking off at the end of July. Hopefully with a sponsor. Finn, are we getting a sponsor?
Hopefully.
Jeez, no pressure.
No pressure? Okay.
I'll try and ask Neil Doncaster if he's got any tips for securing a sponsor. That would be fun.
Oh yeah, in fact, should we all march up there, because we need to go to him. He doesn't go out to anyone else. But in the meantime, anyway, my thanks to both of you guys, as always. Thanks as well to Annan captain Steven Swinglehurst. Don't forget, rate us on your preferred audio platforms as well. But for now, go and listen to something else now. Bye.